How you doing, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the podcast to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as I'm doing, yesterday was pretty good. I went for a nice run after posting the daily episode, which lifted my spirits a bit, even though it was misty and raining and such. When the sun came out later on, we took our dog Bendico for a drag down to the main strip and back. He is truly the world's laziest greyhound. I also started reading Matt Ruff's new novel, 88 Names, and devoured half of that pretty quickly. I could have read the entire shebang, but I decided I would wait until today to finish it. It is insanely entertaining, and I realize now I should have started it a few weeks ago. It would have lightened my mood a lot more than the American history book I was reading for the past several weeks. I'm not sure why I focus on, or why I did focus on heavy nonfiction like I did instead of just losing myself in a story, but I guess that tells you a lot about me. Speaking of losing yourself in a story, today's check-in is with Richard Kadrey. Richard was on the show in February, which we know as the before time, to talk about his new novel, The Grand Dark. I thought I'd wait to get him on this daily series because he'd been on so recently for the main show, but the guest I was supposed to record with last night had a technical problem, and I thought, I could take Sunday off, not put up a new show. Who's listening anyway? But I just fear falling into a rhythm of not doing something. So I looked at the list of guests who said they were up for doing one of these, and then I thought Richard would be easy to talk to. And like everybody else, well, what the hell else did he have going on a Saturday afternoon during a pandemic? So emailed him. He was up for it. He clicked in, and here we are. The author of The Grand Dark and the Sandman Slim series of novels talks about a new, weirder sort of urban horror and plague-ridden dystopia. Enjoy. So, how are you coping?
Weirdly, on and off. It's, my attention span goes up and down. I mean, I've been working from home for 15 years now. But the moment someone told me I couldn't leave, it just completely screwed me up, which is kind of crazy. But there it is. So the funny part is, the good part, I suppose, is that I'm teaching an online class at this moment, and I just bought a PC for the first time in also about 15 years. So I'm learning to use a PC and teaching a class. So that actually fills the time.
I tried jumping from Mac to Windows a couple of years ago, and there were so many little things that just I couldn't get accustomed to. I gave up after about 8 months and switched back to another MacBook. But
I have all my Macs. No, I understand completely, because like today I found the trash. I found it a real, to find the trash can and put it on the desktop was very exciting. So it's all those little kinds of things, and like being able to find your files. I had a video file I was trying to encode, and I just couldn't find it. I didn't know how to find any of my files, and eventually I did, but it is this daily struggle with it. And I'm sure in a few more days it'll all make sense, but it's maddening at first.
No, there's always little stuff, like just trying to do a text pad, like text edit that you have on the Mac, just trying to find something like that on the PC that didn't carry like formatting or anything, that just worked the same way the Mac version worked. Little things like that just drove me nuts. But it's better to be driven nuts by that than global pandemic, wiping out the world as we know it.
It's true. And I actually get to, I have reasons to try it. I'm been told that PCs are better at running a home media center than Macs, and I'm suspicious of that, but I'll give it a try. I don't know. I'm gonna try running Plex on it and see what happens.
So back to the global pandemic destroying the world thing.
Sure.
Does
I
this,
was hiding from the subject.
I know, same here. I've been trying for months. Does this jibe with any, literary or anything you've written or read in terms of, what it's like? Or does this kind of just beat all fiction or all representations as far as your experience goes?
Ironically, about 2 weeks ago, I started a pandemic story, which I have since put aside. I'll probably pick it up again, but the reality and the weirdness of a real pandemic kind of sidelined me from the fictional pandemic I was portraying.
Yeah,
and it never crossed my mind. I mean, this is a while ago when I first got the idea for the story, and the idea of a genuine, overwhelming pandemic in the real world hadn't really hit me as I started it, and certainly not Trump's involvement with this lunatic nonsense.
But also the monotony of it, where we think in terms of, grand panic and everything else, and you realize, at least in this experience, the big sacrifice people have to make is sitting on their asses. That it's so different than, these other either heroic or, terrified takes that we had. It's just, I know. To me, it's really striking. It's not dramatic in that way, I guess. So.
No, it's interesting to me. I've read enough about the plague in Europe, the 14th and 15th century, that I know that people were doing isolation then too. What I'm not clear on, and I need to go back and look at this, is what they were doing during that period. Were some of these people farmers, so they could actually go and still do farm stuff and deal with their cattle? I don't know.
And I think when we last spoke in the murder hotel back in January, there was was it a plague in San Francisco? It was somewhere in California. I think you'd mentioned some basically plague that's sort of been quieted by history that you were fascinated by.
There was an outbreak of bubonic plague in early 20th century San Francisco that I've done some reading on. And that's one of those stories that's just been completely swept under the carpet by history and by the city. They did not want to admit for a long time that this was happening in that Trumpian way, that it disrupts social life, it disrupts business, it disrupts the aura of the city as this, golden tower on a hill that everyone can come to and bask in its awesomeness. So we had to cover all that up and pretend it never happened. And of course, wall off parts of the city where it did.
Yeah.
Or it was concentrated.
And you, have you been kind of forcing people to recognize that history these last couple of weeks, or just kind of keeping it to yourself and I knew this was coming?
I'm not. I'd like to be smug enough to say I saw this first.
Yeah.
But I think I was
saw
like
this
a lot
and had
of,
no idea it could happen again.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was like a lot of people, and I was just hoping that maybe we'd get by, that maybe we had caught it. It's that it's a dueling part of your brain where you're going, well, maybe we're going to get lucky. Maybe it's going to be okay. Maybe there's some scientist somewhere who will figure this out early on. And then there's the other part of your brain going, come on. No, that's not going to happen. Right. And for a while at the beginning, it's like the Iraq War, where I kept thinking, maybe, when all the propaganda came out of the early part of the war, like maybe we're going to get lucky. Maybe this isn't going to turn into the worst catastrophe of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And
lo and behold.
Oh, excuse me, 21st century. I'm still saying 20th century. How's that for you? That's how old I am.
But yeah, at least in those cases, it's human initiated. Something like this. Yeah. It's just we'll say quote unquote nature, I guess. Now, you've been able to, outside of putting that short story aside, have you been able to write, or are you not in writing mode for other reasons at this point?
The class takes up a lot of room, and the PC takes up a fair amount of brain power. But really, a bit of this is like being on tour for me. I found that I can't write like big sections of prose on tour. I can write maybe a scene on tour. So what I do is I can plot and I can sketch bits of the book or the story, and I can outline and things like that. I just don't do the actual writing. So I have a new book that's due in August, which is not that far away. And so I've been poking at that in terms of creating a shape for it. I'm not writing it yet, but I'm working on the shape of the thing so that when some of this stuff clears away, not necessarily the pandemic itself, but when the class is over and I'm thinking better, I can jump into the book with a clearer head.
Are publishers talking at all about a postponement or delaying things at this point?
No, the book comes out at the end of August, so I think everyone's crossing their fingers and hoping that maybe August 25th will be some magical time in the future where things will be semi-normal again. I'm not counting on a tour, and frankly, that's fine by me. But
the president thinks we'll be holding professional football games by September. So
I noticed a couple of groups were trying to kind of skate by. I don't know if they did. I should double check and see if it happened. I know UFC at one point was still trying to hold a tournament down in Brazil, and I wonder if that ever got.
Yeah, then they discovered Brazil was even worse off than other places. I think they've frozen. But today the president met with the heads of the various leagues and argued that the NFL should still be 60 to 70,000 fans in the stadium by September with no delay in the season. Like, okay, that's just in time for another wave of this right before the election. So,
Well, that's the thing. Trump loves an audience. I mean, that's why he likes his daily briefings so much. He's going to go out of his mind if there isn't, a Republican coronation sometime this summer. Yeah, if there's not a convention where he gets to stand up there surrounded by smoke and lights like Prince. He's going to go out of his mind if it's some sort of, virtual event.
Video only. Yeah.
Oh my God. He's going to hate that.
Kind of fitting.
The only solace you can take is the idea of how many of his Confederates would pile into a room like that and infect themselves. So it's like, if you're that much of a dog to Trump and you'll pile in there and breathe all the air together, well, you deserve what you get.
Well, that's where they were this spring or late winter when it's a Democratic hoax. We're going to hold our conservative PAC convention. And lo and behold, we're all in self-isolation and quarantine now. We're afraid of getting positive results. But,
it's dumb of me to say, ha, 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 if they have the convention, they'll all get sick. Because, of course, then they'll go home and infect everybody else along the way. So it's that.
But there's a little schadenfreude thing you're going to get out of it. So.
It is. And it's one of those funny things where you always have to keep thinking about these things when you're talking about the pandemic. There's that. It is a schadenfreude thing. And you do want to sort of smile and giggle at those dumb guys getting sick. But then, again, that the grown-up part of your brain, the reality sets in, and suddenly it's not funny anymore. And I resent the pandemic for not letting me laugh at groups of Republicans.
That may be the pull quote for this episode. But now, are you able to read at all? Have you been able to focus in those terms, or again?
I've been asking people about that, and it's really interesting.
It took me a month to finish a book. At this point.
Well, a lot of people I know They're not reading new stuff. I know a lot of people who are going back to older books, and I found myself doing that. The first thing I looked at when we all got locked down was Cabal by Clive Barker, which is a fun old book of his that I've enjoyed for various reasons. It's a really great outsider story. Mm-hmm. And I went right to that, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it was that comfort food reading. At that moment, I didn't feel like being challenged on yet another front.
Well, I spent a month with Kurt Anderson's book, Fantasyland, his 500-year history of America's batshit craziness. Right. Finished it yesterday, started Matt Ruff's new novel this morning.
Oh, right.
And I'm now I'm halfway through it. It's one of those, I should have been reading this a couple of weeks ago when it showed up, because just great storytelling, a great premise, etc., just to sort of carry me for a while. It's not that it's shallow, but it's just really, great narrative. He just nails the whole thing. I'm like, that probably would have helped me, keep the reading vibe going, instead of, kind of reading the Anderson thing, but also contrasting or comparing everything he was writing about with, yet another Trump press conference and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's stuff I can't really deal with. Like, what is it? Germs, Guns, and Steel.
Oh, God, yeah.
I thought of that, and it was like, no, I'm not going to go near that right now. Forget it.
Yeah, it's that, like, my wife and I trying to figure out what shows we're going to start watching, and it was that moment of, we could start The Leftovers, but maybe this is the exact wrong time to watch something where 2% of the population goes away. So let's go back to Schitt's Creek and other stuff.
There
like
you
that.
go.
Yeah.
That's
what are you been watching or binging on, since you're trying to get this media center together with your PC?
Yeah, I haven't actually been doing that. I'm actually not a binger. Yeah. I've never been a binger. I have friends who can sit down and watch an entire season in a day, and I cannot do that.
I do 1 or 2 episodes of something and then moderate. But you were saying?
That's it. I'll do 2 episodes. I don't know if it's the writer brain. I don't know if it's just I have a low RAM in my brain, but my brain gets filled up, and I want to think about what I just saw. I don't want to just blast through 10 episodes or something and just have it pass in my brain and out again. I want to be able to sit down and look at each episode, or every couple of episodes, and see how it fits together, how each one works. The last show, I started the last season of The Good Place, which is a show I genuinely love.
Yeah.
But, I haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing. And I've got through 3 episodes, had to put it aside for something. And now I'm waiting for the right moment, because I'm going to start the whole thing over again. I'm going back to the beginning. I'm not going to start 3 episodes in. I love the show, and that's one of the ones that I'll only watch 1 or 2, because it's a show with something to think about. I mean, I know it's a goofy comedy.
No, but it's also meant to be savored.
But it is meant to be savored. And there are genuine questions in the show that at least things that mean something to me.
And we now understand the answer to the trolley question, thanks to this whole pandemic scene, which is just get the fuck off the trolley and run away as fast as possible, because it's completely mismanaged.
Because Trump's driving it and he doesn't care.
Right. He's going to try and plow over everybody like Michael does in that simulation. But let me know what you make of the show once you finish up. I'm interested from a story perspective, how you see, where it all goes and how it wraps. So
sure, I'll tell you.
But again, like, given your recent novel and various other post-plague worlds, any vision for what counts for normal, I guess? What would strike you as, okay, we're past it?
I have this weird desire. I have another book I want to write that stupidly is folk horror, which means at some point I'm going to have to go into the woods. Yeah. And I'm going to have to be around trees, and I hate trees. But it's set up in the Pacific Northwest, which means I should go there. And it occurred to me, if I'm going to go to the Pacific Northwest, I should go to the area, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, where they shot Twin Peaks, because I'm also a big Twin Peaks fan. Mm-hmm. So that is one thing I'm going to want to do. It's like, okay, I can travel for research. I can go see a tree and get the lay of the land in a cold, wet part of the country where I want to set this horror novel.
And how constrained is your day to day? I mean, I've been to visit you, and it's, I mean, you're right in the middle of the city. You know, how much are you able to get out versus, you know, the advisory of just sheltering in place?
Well, there's a little bodega downstairs, and so I can get a lot of basic stuff from there. And so I spend a fair amount of time just running up and down the stairs to the little bodega. But I have to admit, I did some silly stuff too. If I'm going to be locked in, I want to have the right stuff to drink. So at one point, I did suit up like I was, you know, in 2001, about to go out in one of the pods. And I did kind of sort of go across town to buy some Angel's Envy bourbon in the one liquor store left in the city that actually had this stuff. And, you know, it was one of those, in a rational way, it was a stupid thing to do. But at the same time, in a emotional way, I really felt like I needed to do it at that moment. And I haven't done anything that dumb since.
Yeah, we've gone out. There was a curbside pickup at a big liquor store about 15, 20 minutes away. If you pre-order, you know, they'll bring your stuff out. But
right,
you know, until I got in the car for that, I'm like, I haven't been in my car for 6 or 7 days. Like there's nowhere to go, nothing to do. Where I live is those woods you were talking about, although not as heavy. We're only 25 miles from New York. And in fact, that was my last stupid thing. I recorded March 7th when we knew things were starting to go off the rails, but not how bad it was going to get. Drove into Gowanus in Brooklyn to record, drove north of the George Washington to record, but in between I went to the Antiquarian Book Fair on Park Avenue on the east side. I drove to all three, so I didn't do subways or anything, but I thought, I'm really going to risk my life to walk around a bunch of, you know, antique book dealers and stuff. And it turns out that's who I am. I ended up not, as far as we know, contracting anything, but you know,
were you suited up or anything?
I kept my gloves on the entire time, and people wanted to shake hands, and every one of them, I was like, nope, I'm not shaking hands. I got back from Japan 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, you know, and they would jump back, but I was like, maybe none of us should be shaking hands. And then within a week we understood, you know, I knew what I was talking about, that we should all just hide away from each other. But
it's such a hard habit to get away from. I mean, I think most of us are past it now, but those first couple of weeks, not shaking hands with people, not having any physical contact.
Even that day with the two podcasts, both guests, you know, came in for either a hug or a handshake, and I was like, nope. We're not going to have physical contact. We're sitting like 3 feet apart, like you and I, sitting there recording. But it's just those things, and I don't know how soon that comes back, or how much we're all going to be tentative around each other going forward.
I think that's going to be the big question: is like how much of things changed permanently, and how much of things changed for this year. At least, because people are now talking about the virus receding and then coming back. So you can't become 100% comfortable again with anybody.
And that's the question. I don't know. You're older than I am. You're around. You're active. Neither of us are gay. But during the AIDS crisis, when it was really, you know, in full attack in the 80s. And what it meant about the way, not just gay people, but, you know, heterosexuals, with a whole rise of safe sex, condoms, etc. You know, it changed everything. You know, in some respects, other respects, people went back to crazy ass risky behavior. But yeah, I just don't know, again, what normal would look like, or how forgetful people are, I guess, afterwards.
Will this be a return to the 20s where all the gentleman and lady wear snappy gloves for a while? That wouldn't be the worst
Dude,
thing.
I would be totally down with that. I would wear those elbow length gloves and just seem like I'm in the Nick or something like that from the turn of the century. But admittedly, I've got strange tastes. But,
well, if you're going to bring those back, you might as well go with spats and sock garters. Just do the whole thing. Just go all the way.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board. Yeah, I think I could roll that pretty well. So you've seen me dress up well, though. So.
I have seen you dressed up well. It would put me to shame. That last interview, I'm just a schlub in my Texas Chainsaw Massacre Japanese T-shirt.
I think it was very stylish. I figure some people have to do that. Meanwhile, all of you guys get to be creative and write as much as you can. But as far as the folk horror thing goes, is it just at this point tons and tons of book research for it, or is it something that's shaping already what you're trying?
A lot of it's just
to do.
reading things. I mean, ironically, at the same time, there are zines coming out, things like Hellbore from the UK. So I snapped up copies of that, and I found a couple of academic books on folk horror and rural horror. Apparently, this is one of the first things I learned. Folk horror is British. Rural horror is American.
Huh.
Though I think we have enough folk horror in this country to start using that name too. But in certain academic circles, the idea of folk horror was completely British. But I think we should just steal it for ourselves now.
I look for you to claim it. So. Any last words, message for listeners, and you are safe at this point, right? You're able to avoid exposure as best you can tell.
Yeah. I have boxes. I again, ironically, I bought a bunch of gloves for various tasks around the,
you could say it's a sexual fetish. It's okay. No one's going to judge. It's all right.
So I have tons of gloves. I have a couple of old surgical masks back from the forest fires in California last year. So a lot of us got N95 masks back then, and I still had one sitting in a closet. So actually in decent shape. I don't go out very much, and when I come back, when I do have to go buy things, everything gets opened and none of the packaging comes in. It all gets thrown away immediately in the hallway if possible.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping is that people do take this seriously. Don't let it wreck yourselves, but take care of yourselves however you have to. Don't push yourselves. Everyone wants to learn a language or something. Don't push yourself in that kind of way. This isn't necessarily the best circumstances. Take care of yourself, stay safe, make it through the end of the year when maybe by Christmas we'll have figured something out. And if the stuff does roar back in the fall, we'll have some way to control it.
Sounds good. Richard, thanks for being my emergency guest today. And
my pleasure.
I figure we'll check in a few weeks because there's no way this is going away over the course of the next month or so.
True.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
And that was Richard Kadrey. Go check out his new book, The Grand Dark, as well as his great Sandman Slim series of urban fantasy horror novels. There are, I believe, 10 of them out, 11th coming soon, and he's going to finish it up with 12. The idea I'm putting across here is there are a lot of them. You can start reading them while you're stuck at home. Might not be the cheeriest of reading, but it's a good story, and it'll keep you going quite a while. So you should check out Richard's site, richardkadrey.com, for more about his books, the online course he was talking about, and other stuff. And that's RICHARDKADREY.com. He's on Twitter as Richard_Kadrey, spelled the same way, Facebook as Richard.Kadrey, and Instagram as rkadrey, all one word. You can find all those links on his site as well as in the show notes for this episode. And we will be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me an update to read on the air or have something you want to share with the listeners, let me know. We'll set something up. I'm at groth18@gmail.com. That's GROTH18. You can find my contact info at our sites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. As far as how I'm actually doing these remote sessions instead of the in-person ones I've done for the previous 360-something episodes, I am using Zencastr, which records each participant's audio track and then puts those up on the cloud so I can get both of those and get a cleaner recording than if I was just recording the other person's incoming. Anyway, that is spelled Zencastr, so no final E. Zencastr is $20 a month to do this full service, but my Patreon supporters more than cover this, especially since I'm not spending money on parking and tolls and gas and coffee and everything else to record in-person episodes, which I am dying to get back to, but of course I would be dying if I did so. So as far as that Patreon I mentioned goes, do not give me any money. I'm doing just fine. Go find the Patreons and other Kickstarters, Indiegogos, GoFundMes, tip jars, whatever, for the artists and writers and creators you like, or for people who are in need, booksellers, other types. Buy gift cards at stores that you want to support if you don't want to buy something. And trust me, there's a moral issue around the don't buy from Amazon, go buy from this bookstore instead because they're shipping. You're still putting the shipping people at risk, even if you're supporting another bookstore. So maybe just gift cards for now would be a good thing. All I'm saying. Anyway, show people some support. And if you're one of those people in need, ask for help. Don't feel guilty. That's all I got to say. This is Sunday, April 5th. I am Gil Roth. This was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories show. Thank you so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.